Some of the content covered may be graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely it's really
Just, I love stories like this because it's
someone scared to death.
Yeah,
that's a real thing. Just there are countless stories of
people that you shouldn't fuck with.
Right, and the JFK assassination all
to real.
I forgot to start that. You're in the right place at the right time. With a mistake on the lake and eastbound in Pennsylvania. This is Type 3 TV. I'm your host, John Blazinski, alongside my faithful friend, Steve Buddha Gibson.
John Blazinski.
And my good buddy out in yonder Pennsylvania, also known as Altoona, a.k.a. Gary Nagel.
How you doing?
Welcome aboard. You're whispering.
Thank you. No, I'm not whispering.
All right, now you're not. Yeah, now you're
changing
slang.
anything.
I know.
Wow.
You're usually yelling, but
Good intro, John.
all right. Sorry.
Starting off strong.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're a little late this week. I got home a little late from work this evening, and so wanted to eat some dinner and then get the show going. So, how are your guys' weeks going? We took a week off. Gary, it's been a couple weeks since you've been on. So,
Yep.
What's Buddha? What's new in your world?
Today was the first day I got to work inside, and it was not 90 degrees.
Did they have air conditioning present?
They did, but it was like 70 degrees outside. So
Oh,
every
of
other
course.
day I've been outside, it's been like 90.
No change.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been really hot and muggy here in the great northeast section of the country. But so, what are you doing? Is it a big project, small project?
No, just banging out some small ones here and there.
Yeah.
Nothing too exciting.
Right.
Did you get your appliances?
Partial. Still.
Well, since you talked to me last.
No. Yeah. It's been a story. I'll tell you that much. So, we bought some. We had a contractor put in a new floor, and then we decided to upgrade our appliances because they were about, I don't know, almost as old as I am, and so that all went good up until delivery, and so it's been a challenge ever since, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So, Gary, what's changed in your world?
I had a spinal injection a couple of days ago, steroid in like the lower lumbar,
Really, for what?
to see if they can reduce some inflammation and or in the bone around the nerves, to see if they can get rid of some right leg paralysis
Really?
that I've been having. Yeah.
And
Woof.
and that's and you had mentioned like you haven't really gone riding dirt bikes or anything like that, or ATVs ever since. So, do you think that might get you back on back in the saddle again?
Well, I mean, never done it before, so I'm hoping for some big improvements. But I don't know, the arthritis and stuff's genetic, but I have a bunch of disc compressions and stuff like that. We'll see how it goes.
Did they find a potato in your spine?
They did not.
Okay.
Very high in the blood tests, though.
Oh, on the starch level?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's a given. You already knew that.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. And I don't know if I can bring this up or not, but you've also moved in the last few weeks too, haven't you?
Yeah, but a couple 100 feet
Yeah. But
into a new house.
yeah. Well, and so you were living on the same property that you were having this house built, and so you moved out of your house of what your entire life into this new property.
Life.
Yeah.
Yep.
So was it crazy kind of change for you?
Well, the house that we were living in is a trailer, and there that we expanded upon. So I had to move the trailer off the land, and it's in a different spot now. And I had to go in there to fix a couple things up the other day. And what was weird is walking around the house that I've lived in my entire life, and then like looking out the windows and seeing it like it's along a highway, completely different scenery. It's just so unreal. It feels like the movie Up or something, or like an entire city's been like built around the house when you're standing in it. It's real weird.
Yeah, and that's weird because like people will actually have their entire house moved to a different location. And you make a good point. You're so used to seeing what you see out of a window. It's kind of like a mind fuck to change that scenery. But that house that you had built is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And so nice view and everything. So, but yeah, again, I mean, to be at a house for almost 30 years and then change, it's got to be kind of strange, especially like with the process and everything that had gone into like getting the house built. I know you were very integral in that, so seeing it from start to finish,
right, it's
probably pretty surreal.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I designed, laid out the house, and I don't know. I'm glad it's finished, and before the big spike in prices from the COVID stuff. So
right, it was crazy too. It's fun. I didn't mention this to you, and it kind of ties into the semiconductor shortage. Friday, I went and to get my last service done on my car as part of the initial package for the lease, and I ended up going to get an oil change and leaving with a new car.
Wow.
And so it just made sense to the dealership to actually have a car, from what I gather, on the lot that they can sell and get somebody into a new lease. So it was like, a business win all the way around, if I understand correctly. So
I'm sure they're screwing you somehow.
Well, you know what? I'm not seeing it, so, and I'll roll with it. So, all right, let's get into some news. Back last time we talked, and this was on June 13th, the Hubble Space Telescope took itself offline due to a fault in its payload computer, which manages the telescope's scientific instruments. Since then, NASA has been doing the sort of troubleshooting that's familiar with many of us, with the added pressure of the hardware being irreplaceable in space, about the same as a vintage Commodore 64. Have you been following this at all, either of you?
No.
Not since you've brought it up, but I am familiar with the project and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I mean, at some point, do you think that they'll end up just replacing it?
Yes, they have it scheduled for the James Webb Space Telescope to
replace the Hubble.
Yeah.
Well,
that is exactly what it's supposed to do. Because the Hubble, when it was sent up, was already like obsolete.
Well, and I know that there was a lens out of kilter or whatnot. So
yeah, they never finished making it. So they were throwing money at the project, and it's so it ended up with like an astigmatism. They were grinding the lens, and they had two of them, and they were grinding the lens, for the spares and stuff, and they just never finished the project. The project got put on hold for like 8 years, and they just never finished grinding it, so it just got put into storage. And then 8 years later, nobody was around to say, yeah, we never finished grinding the lens. And it's such a small deviation that you can't really, test for it. It's just if you just look at it, it's like, oh, the lens looks fine, right?
Well, yeah, and you're building it in a room. You can't just look down the telescope and say, yeah, this is good. I mean,
well, right, like you're trying to focus on things like super far away, so it's just like standing in front of it, just like waving. It's like, oh, this isn't doing, it's not a webcam. So they launched it, and then after it launched, it's like they couldn't focus it correctly, and then they went back to the project and looked through it and figured out they didn't finish grinding the lenses and stuff. So they basically had to make another special lens because you couldn't go up and grind it in space. So they basically had to put glasses onto the Hubble Space Telescope, and of course, so it ruined its performance. And then by the time it was already launched, anyway, it was already consumer electronics were matching what I don't know.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, the technology that was on there, they say typically, government and government sort of operations are, 15, 20, 30 years ahead as far as technology goes. And consumer electronics are, that far behind it. And so by the time it was actually working, I mean, you could find a lot of those parts potentially in your computer at home.
Right.
And, and that's like when you look at footage of the space shuttle back in like 2003, 2004. I mean, all these computers still look like green screen DOS, level computers. There's no graphical interface on there. So
Well, part of that is keeping the code real tight so they can debug it and make sure there's no crashes or whatever, and they know exactly what the code's going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, even for the Apollo stuff, they had 5 redundant computers doing all the calculations. So even if there was a hang up, they'd have other systems, and then they would check the results for every step against the other computers to make sure a computer didn't fail and stuff like that. So you could have 2 computer failures and still have 3 computers still checking one another.
Yeah. You know what's funny too is NASA's like biggest mess ups usually stem from something very simple. Like a door not being Apollo 1, the door hatch not being removable. The Columbia disaster where the tile hits the wing and stuff that they identified and swept under the rug and said no, it should be fine. The Challenger where the guy's like, hey, we shouldn't launch tomorrow, the O-rings are going to fail. Like simple things that just caused catastrophic failure. And so I guess that's a typical government operation. But I guess what they're saying in this article is they still haven't figured out. They figured out what's working. They just haven't figured out what's not working. So still, I don't know. I guess, is it still in recovery mode? I don't know.
Well, I think the James Webb Space Telescope was supposed to launch last year or maybe this year. I don't know what happened with the COVID stuff. I haven't looked it up, but thought they had moved it up and it was supposed to like replace it like very soon.
Gotcha.
Or it was already supposed to happen.
I'd be interested to see like what the pictures are coming off of that. I mean, because the Hubble, I mean, those images are some of the most amazing images ever produced. So I'll be interested to see. All right, this one's out of UPI.com. June 30th, a Slovakian company took its prototype flying car for a test flight between 2 cities, spending a total of 35 minutes in the air. Klein Vision announced its air car prototype 1 spent 35 minutes flying between the cities of Nita and Bratislava. I can't read. Yeah, go ahead. Let them roll in. On Monday, marking the first successful intercity flight for the company. The company said that the air car reached a maximum cruising speed of 118 miles per hour, and the trip was about half as long as the typical drive between the 2 cities. The air car is no longer a proof of concept, Klein Vision co-founder Anton Zajic said in a news release. It has turned science fiction into a reality. The air car, which contains a 160 horsepower BMW engine, is designed to convert into a sports car in a button-operated process that takes about 3 minutes to complete. The company said it's now working on the Air Car 2 prototype, which will feature a 300 horsepower engine, and it is expected to cruise up to 186 miles per hour with a range of 621 miles. Holy shit. This is pretty cool. I mean, it looks like a plane, a small plane, but I mean, I don't know though. Too many of these in the sky at once. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think, is it going to be available to any private citizen?
Well, I don't know. And that's the other thing is like, how do you need a pilot?
Like airspace is so heavily regulated already. There's no way they're just going to be like, here you go, kids, knock yourself out. I mean, you need a certification to even fly a drone. How
and
high
commercially,
can they fly?
Oh, these cars?
Does it actually say?
It didn't say. It didn't say what the cruising altitude was, but they did say the speed. I'm just baffled. Like I said, I mean, it went 118 miles per hour. The thing about it, and that's usually the typical speed it takes. Like, what is it? Like 200 miles an hour to get off the ground in a jumbo jet. But yeah, you need a flight. I think it was a 407 was a drone like recreational license. I forget what the certification is to fly commercially. So if you want to get paid to make videos, yeah, you got to pay for the drone license. And then not to mention on top of that, like all Amazon's trying to work with a drone delivery service. Like all these services are, going to be fighting for airspace. I don't see this really ending well, especially like, just the amount of traffic in a space, at least on the ground, it's on one plane. There's, I mean, the height variable is just, there's too much variable for risk or failure.
I guess, like,
well, basically,
if you're
John,
talking
you've
about
hit the
essentially
it's the
hovering,
cost of failure.
like, we're not talking about.
Go ahead, Buddha.
Like, yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, if we're basically just talking about hovering, we're not talking about, like, expanding to a vertical lane system where now you have different rows, you know, like, say they're stacked 5 high and the one on top fails. You know, it could be like catastrophic to any of the ones that are below, or however it is that they plan on laying it out. But at the end of the day, what's the point? Like, if you're only going to have essentially a car that's hovering, and I use that term just for the sake of not saying it's actually like flying through the sky.
Sure.
Like, what is the point?
I mean, I think it's but I think it's the idea is to get from destination A to B faster. But again, I mean, drive on the highway at rush hour. People can't drive in normal weather, 70 degree, you know, even overcast. Let's just say overcast, because at that point there's no sun to blind to.
Take a step back.
I'm still in traffic.
Take a step back and even look at it from like a more common sense type of scale. That's not going to be affordable for you, me, like any normal person. So, like, all you're basically doing is making a form of a smaller plane. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. To me, like you're talking about, when you get into like the common sense of driving, or like the logistics of driving where people can't even stop on a fucking road. Like, how are you going to stop on a car that when you're fucking texting and flying now at this point? Like, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't even have friction to help stop you.
Well, you've both hit on the two good points, though, Buddha. You're hitting a couple logical fallacies. Like, back when the automobiles first started coming out, cars and stuff like that, like, you had to get out and you had to hand crank them to start them, and they weren't mass produced, so anything that broke had to get like custom made, and they were a pain to make, and they were hard to drive and steer, and they were very rough and didn't have suspension and stuff like that. And a bunch of people looked at them and said, these things are death traps. I don't like them. They don't go that fast. I have a horse that goes faster than this. Why do I need a horseless carriage? My horse on my carriage kicks ass. Right? And so it's the technology as it evolved. You can't see it from that perspective, what a car is useful for, because it's not a fleshed out technology. It's kind of the reverse of a survivor bias, that you can't see the possibility of a technology because it's undeveloped. So you don't know what it would be good for. But the problem with it is the cost of failure. So if like a car is already pretty reliable, but if it fails while you're on the highway, you know, you can pull it off to the side. It's not crashing out of the sky and guaranteed to kill its occupants and maybe take out a building or anything like that. You know, and it's the cost of failure of like a part falling off it in the sky. It's way higher. Like that's the problem. It's the order of magnitudes cost of equipment failure. That's why planes are so regulated and parts have to be changed out so often and stuff.
Yeah, I guess, like, even if I try to sit back and look at it and go, okay, what can we do with this? I honestly can't think of anything other than some guy who's swinging his dick around going, I got a flying car. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but that's exactly what they were doing when cars first came out. They were for the uber rich, and it just looked like a douchebag on like a, you know, one of those self-balancing hoverboards or whatever, just whipping through town. Like, man, you're such a dick. Like that's all it seems like when you look at the technology in that way. It's something that doesn't happen for many iterations and advancements in the technology. Do you see what it's actually useful for?
Yeah, I still, but I mean, yeah, go ahead.
That's assuming that technology is even going to make it. You know, like it may end up not being useful or plausible for anything. So then they get through maybe one or two iterations, and then they're like, this was kind of a dumb idea. We're going to stop this and we're going to move on to something else. Yeah. It may inspire something else, you know.
I see it more going along the lines of like a drone, where you get into the thing, you point where you want it to go, and it flies you there. You know.
Well, that's the other thing. Self-driving cars are already getting there. And it's like these things would definitely, by the time they came out, it'd be 10 or 15 years at the earliest. And regulations and stuff, these would be automated in some way that the human error of the direct piloting wouldn't be an issue, because humans wouldn't be piloting them, probably by law.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way about this, but I feel like technology in some ways, like, we're still increasing technology at a rapid pace, but I also feel like we've slowed down in some things too. Like, could we have had, flying cars by now? Yes. Or could we have had smaller aircrafts? I guess, like, to the point where someone could pilot it on themselves. But again, we're talking about, variables of height. I don't know. I guess I can't wrap my head around it.
Like what you hit on, Gary, about things having to be like fully automated essentially once you get to this point. But what happens even now, like when cars, like I know it's just starting out, but the automation fails and the person that's behind the wheel is too fucking stupid to understand or pay attention, or just can't react because they don't know what to do.
Fucking stupid.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what happens with that when you now have that in the sky? Because I feel like if you're going to plan on using something like this, you're essentially going to be setting up like mini air taxi hubs, because that, like, if that's the route that they're planning on going with it. And I know you guys talked about delivery stuff, which of course, like, I don't know if we're talking about like a futuristic utopia. That's kind of how I'm envisioning it, like Judge Dredd, not a utopia, but Judge Dredd, where they're like, everyone's flying at different heights and they're essentially normal vehicles. But the point being, like, okay, well, what about when the normal me, you, or so-and-so can afford these? And, what about when that auto, or the autopilot or whatever does fail? Like, do you think that the teenager whose rich dad has one, who's assuming texting is still a thing by then, or in some other way is distracted, like, at what point does it become plausible, and at what point does it just become a utility service?
Right.
Well, there's a gray area where you have to get over the hump on developing the technology for it to be safe. This is exactly the same problem I had with cars. When these horseless carriages first started coming out, they would go like 9 to 12 miles an hour, which doesn't seem fast, but that's twice as fast as somebody can run. And in most places, you didn't even have really trains yet that could go that fast. So there was things like, part of the reason like women can't drive them is because like they felt like a woman's uterus would like fall out because like humans hadn't gone that fast, right? Like that's why they couldn't get on trains. And it was the same way with like driving. And so when the technology is that rough and ready, what you need to know to be safe isn't there yet. It's like with radiation and stuff like that. Like, you have to like irradiate and kill a bunch of people when we were discovering like X-rays and stuff like that to know what the safety protocols are. That's where they come from, is figuring out where the accidents happen.
Okay, so I think this is the point I was trying to make here. And when I say like we're progressing as far as like software goes, but hardware I think is where I was trying to relate this to. There were 66 years between the first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and the moon landing. Like, think about that. 66 years. That's one person's life. There are people that lived from the Titanic through World War I, through the first flight, through commercial flight, through the Apollo mission, Vietnam, the 80s, and like the stock market and fair trade going that way, and like the way the world shifted in its economy practices, like in the 80s, all the way up through like 9/11. And so, like I said, I just don't know if we're moving at a rate that is going to see this become commonplace even in the next 50 years. And like I said, first flight and moon landing 66 years apart. I just don't see this happening.
Basically, humanity's kind of advanced the technology on an exponential scale, but I think we've hit a point where we're still basically making exponential progress, but the apparent progress from somebody that's in it doesn't seem that exponential, because we don't see these giant leaps. Because the further you go down the exponential chain, you're getting a wider area. So while the things are still increasing at an exponential rate, the area like under the curve isn't changing it the same way, and we already have all these new things. I think it's just it's a perceptional thing that makes it seem like that. But I would agree from our perception that it seems like technology's stagnated in the last 20 years. But The research and stuff doesn't support that on like a hard technical
I think
level.
it depends what sector you're looking in for the advances.
You hit the nail right on the head. Like,
Right.
as far as personal tracking, information gathering, data collection, we keep going back to is like, yes, all of that has gone off the charts. And certain things
Well,
that
just really like computers and software as a whole.
yeah, and I think that's where I'm going with it too. So, all right, I'm going to shift gears here.
Right.
No pun intended. Buddha, I didn't know if you saw this one here. Norwegian man dead hangs for 16 minutes to break world record. A Norwegian man grabbed hold of a horizontal bar and assumed dead hang position for 16 minutes and 3 seconds, beating the Guinness World Record by more than 2 minutes. Harold Rise managed to dangle from the bar. Again, they note here for 16 minutes, 3 seconds to break the current record of 13 minutes, setting a dead hang world record. It says right here, a wheelchair user with cerebral palsy said he spent more than 10 hours a week training for the record. But, dude, that's insane. I can't even do a second. So,
but like the world record for like planking's like 9 hours or something.
Is it? I don't.
Yeah, it's something crazy like that. And there's more, and like there's two people that keep battling back and forth. Like they're doing it so long they're
Like the
getting
King
bored
of
while
Kong?
they're doing it. Yeah.
Huh. What's your dead hang time, Buddha?
I've never tried it for any length of time.
Oh, really? I thought you would have maybe like. What about planking?
I mean, same thing. It's not like I sit there and try to do it for hours on end.
8 hours, 15 minutes, and 15 seconds.
What's that?
The planking world record. And
But
it's set by an ex-Marine age 62.
Yeah, ridiculous. Because he's the only one that has all day to just plank.
You even plank, bro?
You even plank it?
Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know if you saw that. I know that you're like into like working out and stuff like that. So I thought it might be
I never understood like what is the point for doing dumb shit like that.
But I mean, what's the point in lifting a giant log?
I don't know. I mean, I guess to each their own. But
Right. No, I know.
I just feel like the amount of time that you would spend to just hang, I could
Right.
definitely do something else.
He's just hanging out, bro.
Yeah.
But no, like, and you might know the answer to this because I don't. But like, why
The only way I want to hang is from a noose.
No, but like, what about like, why do they decide like, okay, we're gonna do keg throwing, and so a keg is what they chose to do.
It's usually based on like old world strength contests that they would do literally like with the Celtic games and shit, or the Highland games. Like it's literally stuff that they would do back in like old times where they might have like the Dinny stones. Like they might have literally a stone and they're like, hey, we're all going to get hammered at this bar. And then people start popping off at one another and they're like, I bet I could carry that stone farther than you. That it literally is where it came from. And then it just turned into an event nowadays. And it's literally based on old stuff like that. It was literally just guys swinging their dicks around, you know, at the tavern being like, I bet I can do more than you. I bet I'm stronger than you. I bet I could walk that farther than you. It's just a pissing contest.
That is the second time you've used that analogy tonight.
Well,
what's on your mind? All right. I got two more stories here, and then I'll punt it over to one of you guys. All right, this one's out of UPI.com. A search and rescue dive team in Idaho recovered an iPhone that had been dropped into a river 3 days earlier, and the alarm was still sounding. Tom Adams said his wife, Marlo, were kayaking on a bridge near Snake River when his boat overturned near the Tilden Bridge boat ramp, causing him to lose his phone, keys, wallet, and fishing pole into the fast-moving waters. Adams ended up contacting the Bingham County Search and Rescue Dive Team, which agreed to help look for his lost property as a training exercise. Adams said it took about 20 minutes of searching before one of the divers surfaced with his keys and iPhone, which was still sounding an alarm. It was sounding an alarm from my Sunday morning wake-up call. Crazy, like how watertight. I don't know how deep it was the water was. It doesn't mention here in the article, but again, like, I mean, 5-10 years ago, you get a drop of water on your phone, you might as well call it quits. Like, this thing sat underwater for a couple of days.
Do you remember when they would put a sticker on the inside of your phone, and then if it got wet, it would change color?
They
Yeah.
still
Do they really?
They still do that?
Yep.
Was
They
that
want,
it?
they want to know if there's moisture in grass.
Wait, what?
They want to know if moisture has gotten into the phone. So it's just not a liquid indicator. It's like moisture. So if you're just like took it into a sauna or something, it would do the same thing. You don't have to like immerse it.
So steam would cause it as well then.
Yeah. If it penetrated the phone, if the case.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, you watch these videos of people that get these phones like the day they come out and they just put them through the ringer. I don't know, kind of a waste of money because haven't they already tested that? You know, I don't know.
Well, you'd think so. Well, their marketing claims to have tested it, so that's why some people need to like independently verify things, because marketing will just lie and distort and, you know, twist anything to sell it.
Yeah. Oh man, I just watched this little documentary on, I can't remember the name of the drug, and fuck, was it thibutamide or fuck? I'm gonna have to look that up. But
In
basically,
the 50s,
what they did, what's
the
that?
birth effects?
Yeah,
Thalidomide. Yeah,
thalidomide. Yeah,
yeah. The chiral isomers would the left-handed version was safe, and the right-handed version like caused horrible birth defects or something.
When you were just talking about people coming out saying stuff was safe, and then that popped into my head where they literally wrote like a health report on it and submitted it to the FDA, and it had like these doctors' signatures on it, and it turned out that like it was either the president or like one of the sales higher ups in the company that was manufacturing it actually wrote that report itself, the safety report, and it was never even like put through any doctors or anything.
Jeez.
It's kind of fucking yeah, dude. And like they brought in this one doctor, I don't remember her name, to the FDA, and like as her first project, because that they were basically like they were giving thalidomide to everybody for everything. I mean, and they came out and they're like, it's safe for pregnant women. And I mean, obviously that's
right.
One of the side effects is being born with flippers. Like, and I'm not even like making a joke. That's literally like what you're born with, flippers. And this woman was brought in as like the doctor to the FDA that was supposed to go over that. And they kind of gave it to her as like a softball, because they're like, oh, this stuff's being used on everything. Like, there's no reason we're going to have any issues. And she started looking at the reports, and she's like, none of this stuff is right. So then she actually went and did like a thorough report on it. And she's like, this stuff needs to get pulled. Like, this is terrible. It's causing problems all over the world. And they swore up and down, like they dug their heels in, the company did, that it was totally safe and there was no issues, blah, 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 blah. And I think it took like 2 years and they got it banned, and it wasn't used for, 50 years or whatever. And then this other doctor was looking for something that would like shrink, it would like lessen the blood flow in, I don't know, forgive my terminology, if it's in your veins, but whatever it's used for, it's for macular degeneration. So whatever in your eye, it would restrict the blood flow to that area. And thalidomide was one of the things that actually helped in that sense. And it ended up getting like a new approval to be used for that and like a couple other things, but it's supposed to be like the most strict approval that's ever been given to any drug because of its prior history. And now in like Brazil and shit, they're starting to see these thalidomide births again. So it's happening again.
Jeez. It's fucked up.
Yeah, that goes to how well they make the drug. Yeah, right, because they're already getting the money. It's you have to be stereospecific when you make the two enantiomers of the thalidomide. The one chiral part, when you make the drug, it's not very stereospecific, and if you mix up, the one side will cause these birth defects and the other one's safe, but you have to make sure you're very specific on how you make it. And so if you cheap out anywhere along the lines, or you don't have very strict quality control, it's very easy to mess up the chemistry and start producing both enantiomers of the thalidomide drug.
Crazy.
And they said even during, like, after they were basically called out for being pieces of shit, like, nobody from the company ever even, like, put out an apology.
Yeah, I mean, to them, there's Yeah, whatever.
How are people not thrown in fucking prison for that shit? Like, they should be strung up in the middle of town.
Plausible denied deniability. Yeah, exactly. Lobbyists and lawyers. And
if you're running that company, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, that's like saying if I own a company and one of my employees fucks up, I can be like, well, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. That's not how that works. Unless you're rich.
That's interesting because, I mean, even look at this building that collapsed. One of the engineers or somebody that came out said, hey, this building's going to collapse, and you need to get this fixed. And it was on the plan to get fixed, I guess. But, I mean, someone was completely just disregarded. And where's the blood? Where's the blood? Whose hands is the blood on?
I saw an article that was talking about like that area, because that was Miami-Dade, right?
Yeah.
I saw an article saying that area, was it the 70s or 80s when that was built? Whatever it was like a huge mafia area for building. So they would push through a lot of permits and shit for like building up those apartment buildings. And then even when they would come out and say like, hey, either this area is not good for building or the ground isn't solid or whatever it is that they're doing, it was the fucking mob. So they would just basically be like, make it fucking happen. And
right.
Then they would also use like cheap materials and shit like that. I don't know if that's true. That was just one of the articles talking about a lot of the buildings that went up in that area in that time period.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, not funny, but I heard a story about where one of these guys that his mother is still missing had mentioned that, she woke up the night prior and heard all this creaking and like snapping and things, and she didn't really sit well with her, but she couldn't fall back to sleep the rest of the night. And it's like, meanwhile, this building is getting ready to just collapse on itself. It's horrible. But
wow.
Did they say if there was like any like seismic activity, or did it literally just collapsed under its own weight?
I think it just collapsed under its own weight. Like there was just not a sinkhole, but like with the water from the pool that was like flowing in underneath the ground, there was just nothing there to hold it up anymore.
Oh, like it eroded underneath.
It eroded or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, there's over 100 people still missing. Like, it's going to be, months before they probably recover these people. If they're even still like, you watch things from 9/11 when the buildings collapsed, people were just pulverized into dust. So,
yeah.
It's like, are these people even, what remains of any of these people?
Have you ever seen somebody like jump in front of a train?
No.
And they just explode?
Yeah, no, it's just a pink cloud of mist. It's crazy. Like 1 second they're a person, and the next second they're just vapor.
I've never seen that. I mean, is that really what happens?
Yeah. On these high-speed trains in like Europe, people like jump in front of them and kill themselves, and there's just nothing left.
Well, I mean, that makes sense because, the train's going so fast. But, and that's weird. Like, if you ever thought about, we're comprised of atoms that are moving, right? But yet we're solid objects. Like, how is it that, like, I can't put my hand...
like that.
Well, no,
yeah.
I know, but, like, how is it that, like, could you manipulate yourself on the atomic level to go through a wall or put your hand through a table? You know what I mean? Without disturbing or just moving the atoms from the table to the side,
Right. Essentially, yes. Like the table's like that. Nothing's solid, and basically, nothing interacts and touches. If you looked at like an atom or like the nucleus, if you were standing on like the 50-yard line, like the electron, the first orbital electron shell is like a ping pong ball going around like the goalposts, right? So all molecules and atoms are basically empty space. So it's the phase at which the orbital clouds are orbiting is where that space comes in. So if you could change the way like molecules phase, you could pass things through one another. I mean, we're not at that point in physics, but it's clearly like it'd be like somebody like trying to break into a museum or something and just jumping through all the lasers and like contorting your body. Like the stuff's not there. They just wouldn't physically touch. Like we're not taking up the same physical space. You can just move through things.
Yeah. Well, like what does the space look like in between You know, I mean, right now you can't see through it, but is the space between atoms, does it look like outer space where it's black in between? You know what I mean? I don't know. Am I getting too deep?
Well, it only appears black because there's no light coming to right. So it's yes, there's nothing in between them.
My head hurts.
Well, that's why like in that Spanish, like black and white. So it's a cultural thing. If you think the word for like light means the light or the dark, that's why some languages have like the words black and white reversed. It's the way you come at it, like your perspective.
Gotcha. That was always interesting too. Like the way perspective is what I consider green. You're blue.
Right.
You know,
I've had this debate with a lot of people.
I don't know. Well,
it's impossible to tell, basically.
Right.
I just tell them that they're wrong.
And then you threaten them with violence.
Right. When I was younger, you know how like if you don't focus on something, but you're looking, like if you're looking at something, but you're kind of not really focusing, like if you're focusing on the thing behind it, you'll get like an image that kind of blurs two images because your eyes are trying to put it together. You guys know what I'm talking about? So when I was like a little kid, I thought I had X-ray vision because I could see through that second image.
Oh. All right. So last story I got for tonight, and then I'll kick it over to you guys. And this scares the ever-loving crap out of me, just saying. Chinese President Xi Jinping warned that any country that attempts to bully China will face broken heads and bloodshed during a defiant speech Thursday marking the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. Have you guys been following this at all?
I mean, I'm
following what?
familiar with what China's
China
been
as a
doing,
whole?
especially over the last 10 years, but not this particularly. Yeah, I vaguely do, but not this particular incident.
Well, it's very vague, and he's not pointing out any country in particular, but he's just said the Chinese people will absolutely not allow any foreign force to bully, oppress, or enslave us, and anyone who attempts to do so will face broken heads and bloodshed in the front of the Iron Great Wall of 1.4 billion Chinese people, said the celebrator near Tiananmen Square, filled with thousands of people waving Chinese flags and singing patriotic songs. Without the Communist Party, there will be no new China, he said, roaring to the roaring applause. The U.S. and other countries have also taken action against China, which has the world's second largest economy, for unfair trade practices and for stealing intellectual property. There was also something here that says, here. It says, we will turn the people's military into a world-class military with even stronger capabilities and even more reliable means to safeguard the nation's sovereignty, security, and developmental interests. And so, and then also solving the Taiwan question and realizing the complete reunification of the motherland are the unswerving historical tasks of the Chinese Communist Party and the common aspiration of all Chinese people. From what and I'm not really any expert on this, but the Taiwan thing where they're talking about absorbing Taiwan again, and that's going to put a lot of sour feelings out there.
Definitely. Yeah, China thinks it's their country. Taiwan wants to be independent.
Right.
Yeah, and they're like anybody that agrees that Taiwan's an independent country, like China's blackballing already. And
well, not only that, but I mean, like, who's going to intervene? And is this like by them going in and reclaiming that? Is that going to start a World War III?
Well, it might. Well, there was like a 100-year treaty that like.
But that was for Hong Kong.
Britain. Yeah, basically, and stuff like that. And but the problem is the UN is a bunch of pussies and don't actually police anything, and they basically are sucking China's dick. Like that's why COVID-19 is called that, and why they screwed around an extra month is because the CCP didn't want the name to be associated negatively with them, so they fought really hard to make sure it wasn't called like the Wuhan flu.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bullshit like that.
Literally everybody sucks China's dick. It's fucking pathetic.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah,
I get away with so much shit.
And like, I'm not like anti anybody here, but again, we're talking about a party that basically forces people to work for very low wages, and I mean, people are jumping out of buildings
right,
from the factories they work in. And so I'm surprised like that they have, this much support, but at the same time,
dude, everybody has support when you got a fucking gun pointed at you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
it's not real fucking support.
Well, it's not even them. It's your family and everybody you love.
Right.
Anywhere
exactly.
in the world. Like they have their people going to other countries, just like, and they have to spies and social, like pressure and stuff like that. It's you even speak out against the CCP or like say anything even remotely bad about them in like China or whatever, and it's your ass is grass, and they can do whatever they want basically.
Yeah, and I mean 1.4 billion people to our 300 million. I mean they'll wipe the floor with us if they came over here and invaded.
Dude, you're talking about a bunch of fucking, and not in a derogatory way, but like a bunch of fucking farmers, not soldiers.
A lot of them are.
But I guess, but strength in numbers is my thing. Like, there's no way
they're not gonna bring 1 billion people to America.
Maybe not here, but they could sure push right across Europe and stuff like that.
Well, that but they're also not in any shortage of people either.
Right.
So, when you think you've done enough, is it really enough?
They actually did just change that law to where you're allowed to have a third kid now.
Really? Wow. Yeah. To what? Farm and army? I don't know. Scary shit, dude. Like, I mean, we try to bring in paranormal and creepy stuff, but this stuff, I mean, when someone talks like this and basically says, well, we're going to absorb this country, we're going to do it, do something about it, and if you want to push us, you're going to get your head cracked too. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's essentially what he said. So.
Well, I mean, like, look at what's going on with like, North Korea and like how
literally everybody's afraid
that's
of
been going
China.
on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, they want their free shit. They're cheap shit, right? So it's like you have political reasons not to do it, and I don't know, right? Like so, like back when after the Korean War, like the U.S. had to like look over like South Korea. China was supposed to look over North Korea. Like that's why now South Korea is a republic and like democracy, and North Korea is still communist and run by dictators, stuff like that. Like China's definitely the CCP is playing both sides of the field, and it's a bunch of bullshit.
All right. Well, we'll move on. Buddha, what do you got for tonight?
It's actually kind of similar to, I think it's similar to something that we talked about before, but it's actually called Angel Hair Rain, and it actually sounds kind of similar to like the Oakville Blobs. Do you remember that story, the star jelly?
Yeah.
And this was back in 1959, November 2nd, in Portugal, Evora, Portugal. And Professor, I don't even know how to say these names. I'm going to fucking butcher them. I'm just going to say Professor Amaral was a biologist of a local college, and he was at school one day, and he was like just in his office doing his thing, and he was a bunch of students rushed back in, and they were like, hey, there's something in the sky. You should come take a look at this. So he goes out and he sees like these, essentially, for lack of a better term, UFOs, and it talked about being like, let's see, a seamless elliptic object, perhaps the size of a commercial jetliner, except it had no wings, no windows, and no visible propellers. Sometimes it would hover in place, then move southwest at a speed that defied the laws of physics. Minutes later, a second flying object popped up out of nowhere, which was similar to the first, but much larger. And it goes on to say that he described it as a colossal disc. Basically, that's the best way to put it. So at this point, he kind of starts thinking like, man, I'm getting old. I'm definitely seeing shit. Like this is not anything normal. And he just kind of lets it go and says, all right, well, that was fucking weird. So it says 100 kilometers northwest of Professor Amaral's hometown, a team of fighter pilots were preparing to take off for their routine flights at the Sinatra Air Base. Captain Silva, who had his helmet on and his plane's controller in one hand, was going over his checklist with everything. He was supposed to just like a normal flight, nothing crazy, no clouds, perfect visibility. Just kind of like, this is going to be a nice day to go flying. And it says, as he's sitting there, an odd slimy substance begins to form on his canopy. Silva rubs it in with his gloved hand from the inside. It's not condensation, and it couldn't be snow or hail, as there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. He radios the pilot behind him, and he too reported the same observation, that it was a slimy substance coating the outside of his plane. So then his takeoff gets postponed for a few minutes so that they could get out and take a look. As they get out on the ground, they realize that this like white, yellowish, slimy substance is everywhere. It's all over the plane. It's on the ground. It's starting to fall onto them, and they have no idea what it is. So then it kicks back over to Evora, where the original Professor Amaral stands outside with his hands outstretched to catch the filaments. And at this point, he describes them as looking like something similar to spider webs, except there were tons of them. And now they're beginning to form clumps on the ground. There were no spiders found anywhere around. So he ends up taking this oily substance and puts it on a petri dish. And it says, oh, that part doesn't really matter. But basically, he gets this substance and puts it on a petri dish, and then goes inside to investigate it. And he takes a look at it. And it says, after all, he's an astronomer. He is not a biologist. And exciting flying crawlies truly was minuscule. So he ends up meeting up with, sorry, I lost the dude's name. Well, basically what happens is he goes and meets this guy because the guy thinks he's fucking crazy. And he's like, man, there's no way that whatever you're seeing is not anything fucking crazy. So they put it under a microscope, and they realize that it's like, it almost kind of mimics like I guess it would be a one-celled organism, but it's kind of shaped like a jellyfish. And they put it under the microscope on a slide, and they zoom it in like 125 times. And it shows that not only is this some actual type of organism, it's once the slide is put over top of it, it shows this thing reacted in a defensive stance, and it actually attempted to push the slide back up as if it knew it was being crushed by something else, And they pretty much, after this happened, all of his like any reports that he would put out were either just like ridiculed, swept under the rug. He would catch like a ton of shit from different scientists like trying to discredit him, and he eventually just kind of let it go. And it turns out that during this time, Portugal was more of like I can't say the word, authoritarian state, and they basically didn't want any of this stuff getting out, that they had found like this single-celled organism that was just falling from the sky, and no one had any idea what it was. So they basically, all of his records, he was suspended. All of his records were quote unquote lost in a fire because the building was set on fire. This was many years later, after he had already kind of been exiled. And basically, after they said that he lost all his information, the Portuguese, God, I can't fucking talk. I'm sorry. The Portuguese government basically covered up everything else, never admitted that any of this stuff ever happened. And he had sent like some of his report out to Spain, France, and America, England, all these different universities to have it basically translated, looked at, and then published. All of that stuff just kind of disappeared. And they're kind of, I mean, that's basically the story, but it kind of talks about that they never actually came up with what it actually was. And the different like theories of what it was have you guys ever heard of like those flying spiders? I guess they're more in Australia, but they don't actually fly, they glide, but they kind of, they'll like loose webs as they glide. So that's like a normal thing to see. I don't know how common it is, but it's like a normal thing where they've, areas will just be like basically covered in these spider webs from flying spiders. Well, they try to come out and say that, no, it was just this, it was just spider webs, which if you believe what he actually saw, on these slides, the fact that it was actually like a jellyfish shaped type single-celled organism with tentacles and what appeared to be a mouth in the center of it. They said it either resembled a starfish or a jellyfish, or some type of inorganic gas. But I mean, I'm no fucking chemist. I guess it would be a chemist. I don't know. What exactly would an inorganic gas be? Just like a non-naturally occurring gas? How does that work?
Well, so this is a term where industry knowledge is important. And organic doesn't mean like life. It means organic from a chemical standpoint of how they wanted to define organic chemistry. It basically means there's a difference between organic and non-organic chemistry. So organics are different types of molecules that will react and be used in certain ways. But basically anything life is part of that organic stuff, but that's not what they mean by the term organic.
So does it mean like a naturally occurring gas or like something that would have been manipulated and created?
No, there's no distinction there. It's just, what did they call the gas? Just inorganic?
It literally just said inorganic gas. It wasn't named.
Well, so inside this gas, there would be this amoeba that they're talking about, this single-celled.
Yeah, well, that was a separate theory. They said it was either what the professor claimed that it was it resembled a single-cell organism that was shaped like a jellyfish. And then it says one of the let me see if I can find that actual part. One of the theory here. It says another suggested the filaments were vaporized meteor fragments, and yet another implied it could be the residue of an unknown inorganic gas, maybe Cold War stuff. No hypothesis was adequately backed up by credible elements of comparison. So I don't know if that helps explain anything. That doesn't mean shit to me. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Well, I don't know what. Oh, it couldn't be. Like a single cell organism in the gas, and then say it's an inorganic gas. Like the inorganic gas is, if it was a gas cloud, it would basically it's like carbon bonds. Like it wouldn't have double carbon bonds in it, like an inorganic thing. So like you can have like an inorganic salt because it's not like sodium or whatever because it's not bound organically in a way that would form life. It doesn't have these carbon bonds in it, right? So that's all it's saying. If it's saying it's an inorganic cloud, it's more saying it's more of a vapor that's doesn't have complex bonds in it, which doesn't make sense. How could it be a single cell organism but then not have complex bonds?
So all of that's over my head, but a question just to dumb it down: how exactly would a gas, like what would be like remnants, like a residue from a gas? Like what? Describe that.
Do you really want to ask that question?
It depends if it came out of John's butt or not. It wouldn't be remnants in the gas. It'd be what the gas is carrying. So, like the atmosphere, our air can carry water vapor, and that the water vapor in the air can carry organic molecules and germs and stuff like that. That's like when you sneeze.
Is that similar to how like when a storm happens and like fish get swept up into a cloud?
Basically the same thing. Yes. Yeah. Right.
Okay. So something trapped in the gas.
Well, basically, yeah. Right. So it's just like when you put sugar in water or something, right? Like that's dispersed in there, but you can still separate the two out. That might not have been the best example, but
but I know
the gas is
a
carrier for like something like moisture, and then the moisture is a carrier for the thing. So when the gas leaves or the moisture, like the humidity changes, then something in the gas can crash out onto a surface, and then it's left behind from the gas. But it's not usually the gas leaving a residue unless the gas is making some sort of chemical bond or interaction with the surface of the thing, and that's not what they're talking about.
Huh. Yeah. That.
So, like, I mean, could it also be considered what they would call a plasma? You know? Uh-oh.
Fuck if I know.
Thought we lost the stream there for a second. Think we're good. Anyway,
no, it's on.
Yeah,
we're still good.
It went. My preview went down for a minute. But yeah, like, what defines? I mean, because you have solid, liquid, gas, But then they've also said
so
plasma.
you're talking about a state of matter. Well, there's kind of 7 states of matter. So it's one where the electrons aren't bounded because they have such a high energy level that they're flying off from the nucleus. An example is fire. That's what fire is. It's a form of plasma.
Really?
Yeah. It's usually asked the other way around. It's like, so that's an example of it. I don't think that's what they mean when they say, like a plasmic discharge or something. I think they're more referring to like blood plasma.
Plasma is it considered like a visual form of energy, like lightning, fire? Well,
that's what lightning is. So lightning is plasma.
But you can visualize it. You can see it.
Right. You can see fire too. But because it's lightning happens when the energy goes through it. It's superheating the oxygen molecules, and the electrons are firing off. That's why it's creating that plasma.
Well, and the reason that you hear thunder is because the molecules are rushing back in to fill the space that the lightning created. That isn't that true? Like it's the vacuum of air molecules rushing back to fill the void that the lightning created.
Yeah, something like that. That's the theory behind like a bullwhip. Like when you crack it, what's the sonic boom? It's actually the vacuum becoming supersonic and the air filling back in.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn. You ever see pictures of planes breaking the sound barrier? It's crazy.
Here's actually a couple different ones, which from different scientists. So it says, pretty much after him just being tormented, he became less. This is Amaral, or I don't know how to say his name, Amaral, but he became less and less vocal about his findings to the point where he adamantly refused to speak publicly about them ever again. But he never gave up his quest to get to the bottom of it. When he went to his grave in the 90s, he left behind an impressive compilation of his research on the angel hair phenomenon, providing that in the vast majority of cases, it was preceded by UFO sightings just like this. In 2008, investigators reached out to Professor Azevedo, which is the guy he originally brought the sample to. He was the one that first examined the pictures of the being back in 1980 and who agreed to re-examine them in light of modern science. Azevedo, a professor emeritus at the University of Lisbon, then retired, dedicated his life to studying the previously unknown cellular structures and phenomenon. This is a quote from him. From what I can tell from the photos I was sent, and that I am now re-examining many decades later, this structure, or microorganism as some called it, is still unknown to contemporary science. It is made up of a body with 10 arms, and its appearance vaguely resembles a starfish. The photos do not show any type of cellular organization. I was unable to identify a single structure akin to an earthly single-cell organism. Almost 50 years later, I reread the reports, including my own report, and I restate what I wrote back then. This could have been an organism. However, the samples were not prepared correctly by Amaral in 1959, which makes it impossible for me to make an educated guess. And then it talks about Professor Carapicho, which is another cellular biologist, argues that we could be looking at a sea-dwelling microorganism like the billions that live in the deep Atlantic Ocean. He believes microscopic jellyfish larvae could be a good comparison candidate. And then it says, but how would billions of microscopic jellyfish make their way from the Atlantic Ocean into the skies only to rain down in filaments all over southern Portugal? And then there's a couple, I'll just read like one or two more of different scientists that are actually touching on this. Professor Berenguel, who conducted both the 1980 and 2008 investigations in the case, believes the organism comes from somewhere in the top layers of the Earth's atmosphere. He is a historian who specializes in fringe science breakthroughs and accounts of unexplained phenomena. He is convinced the being is a microscopic vegetable species with properties similar to those of a carnivorous plant, as demonstrated by the vigorous protective reflexes that were observed in 1978. I mean, it seems like they're all pretty much in agreement that it is an actual organism and not I don't know what else it would be. I mean, I'm not a fucking scientist.
But here's my question. Like, and you just mentioned that it was, they're thinking that it might be like a vegetable. Like, were we ever able to measure life outside, and I forget the layers of like atmosphere you're at, like where you're at, normal ground and the stratosphere. That's the only other one I know. What are they, Gary? Help me out here.
Well, so yes, things can survive up that. So we have proof that things could like survive in like deep space on like rocks for long periods of time. Things like the tiny bear-like thing called a tardigrade. That's very like super survivalist. It can like dehydrate itself and like go into a freeze-dried state, and live without oxygen and like negative 200 degrees Celsius. Like, I don't know, they're crazy if you ever look them up. They're very extreme things that so life definitely can find a way.
Did they mention if there was any proteins in there?
No.
Yeah. Just curious.
When you're talking about things that are existing like in whatever levels of the atmosphere, is it specifically like single-celled organisms, or is there like anything more complex that can live? Like what we would consider, like a normal person would consider life. Like, is there any type of plants or anything that can exist in the atmosphere? Or is that just like an incredibly stupid question?
Well, I guess we would have seen them by now, but and that's the other thing. Okay, so let's say we land on Mars and we find a single-celled organism that is living. Are we going to consider that life on another planet,
Well, because it's talking about, like this last dude was just saying a microscopic vegetable species. So, I mean, would you consider that a plant? Like, would they just go, oh,
right.
That's a plant?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to compare it to like a Venus flytrap.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let me ask this question to both of you. Okay. They find a molecule, or not a molecule, but I'm sorry, just a single-celled organism on Mars. Are you considering that life, or no? Like, does it need to be multi-celled and you can see it, you can watch it run around, breathe?
Well, the SETI defines it as the search for, extraterrestrial intelligent life. So, like, basically, like dolphins maybe, or like monkeys, but like humans are like basically the only intelligent species here. So, like, they wouldn't consider like a rat probably like intelligent life.
You dirty rat. All right, sorry.
But you're basing that off of like one dude's theory, right? For talking about intelligent life, because couldn't you technically?
I'm asking you guys the question. Do you consider?
I'm like reiterating your question, like back at you,
right?
To say, like, wouldn't you almost consider anything that responds in a way to whether it's like defensive or offensive would you just consider that a reaction, or would you consider that saying, no, it's intelligent enough to know that it's in danger?
No, because plants and stuff do that. Would you consider a plant intelligent life?
I don't know, because I've read stuff where they said that there was tests that they hooked up not EKG meters, but like something to get a reading off of a plant, and then they hacked up another plant next to it, and they were able to get like not emotional, but like they were able to get readings at something within
like
the plant.
Stress.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they were able to record like a stress level off a plant.
Well, so they send like chemical things through the ground and communicate, but we're so inadequately defined on that. We have no idea what's going on. Like down in like Australia and stuff, you can like take parts of like the coral reef off of like take them off and like put them in buckets, and then you could take that coral reef and stick it under like a sink in like Britain, right? It has no connection to the ocean or whatever, right? And you're talking it's halfway around the world, and those things will still bloom within like 4 seconds of another. Like they have like over like a year apart. Like they have some forms of communication that we're not currently able to wrap our heads around.
Is that more intelligent than we are?
Well, it's just different. It's just something we currently aren't investigating in a certain way, or currently don't understand or care to understand.
Got to be like the Na'vi, man. Connect with nature. All right.
We don't care to understand that, but then we'll fucking spend government money to research the fucking mating habits of a housefly.
which is probably pretty high considering like I've already had to kill like 2 or 3 in the last week here. That's also because we've had a lot of people going in and out of the house, so I don't know.
Well, any one fly's lifespan is only like 24 hours. Like
I remember that commercial where like it's like a baby and then all of a sudden it's an old man 24 hours later. All right. That's crazy. Buddha, thank you for that story.
Oh, and last thing, it's evidently there's a lot of different stories where like similar things like this happen right around the same time as like a ton of like UFO sightings and unexplained phenomena. It seems a lot of it's from the Cold War era. So
is it a byproduct of nuclear testing too?
Who knows?
I mean, because you have to consider, okay, we did something on the atomic level in the atmosphere, right? Did we create single-celled organisms in the upper atmosphere that we can't see, we can't measure really, and then all of a sudden they just kind of drift around in that atmosphere until they fall to Earth? Like, did we create something without knowing it?
Or is it that we actually have single-celled alien jellyfish flying around? We just don't know.
Right.
Oh. Yes.
Had to do it at least once tonight. Oh. All right. Well, cool. Thank you for that story. Gary, what do you got tonight?
Well, it's kind of recent, but not crazy so. So in Britain and Europe, they still do a lot of pigeon racing and stuff like that. And there's been reports of birds getting lost in like the Bermuda Triangle a lot. But this time, I guess it was a few weeks ago, there was a bunch of birds released for a race, and they just kind of got lost in like the Bermuda Triangle. So there were some things with maybe like a solar storm disrupted it, but there was also paranormal stuff that they're being called to like they're following other races that had happened in the past or something. I've tried to bring up the articles I was reading and haven't really found too much of the crazy ones, but like there's one from metro.co.uk about thousands of pigeons vanished mid-race in the Bermuda Triangle mystery. So people just can't figure out why the birds have flown there and they haven't returned. A bunch of them had tracking devices on them, and they just seem to have disappeared from the planet.
And you're saying it typically happens around times of storms?
There wasn't really any storm, but just they seem to have, some of them have been tracked and they seem to just disappear around the Bermuda Triangle. But they were released for races and they're carrier pigeons, and they were released in like Britain.
Right.
And then they made it the whole way down into the the Cubans and it disappeared. They can't figure out why some of the birds went there and then what happened to them after they disappeared.
Well, but the tracking devices, like, can they withstand going in water a certain depth? Can, what's the lifespan of the battery? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So are you saying that they were drawn there and that was like nowhere near where they were supposed to be going?
That's what it seemed like from some of the ones I was reading. The one I have up doesn't really mention it, but they're very specific about it going like they were released for a race. They're annual carrier pigeon race, and a bunch of them have gone AWOL. More than half of the 9,000 pigeons taking part haven't returned.
What's the average amount for not returning?
Well, they're carrier pigeons. They're trained to return, so they're it's a very high return rate. They specifically don't say, but only 10% managed to return in the expected time, and half of them were delayed.
And they still haven't gotten back.
Yeah, so up to 250,000 birds were released.
So stupid question, but over wherever they are, like, was it more so like to a specific city or area in Europe, or does it just kind of say Europe in general?
The UK and Britain, it doesn't really specify whether the race. I mean, they were tasked with deciding where and when the birds would be released on each race day, and the Federations were checking the weather stations, and there was apparently no warning signs that something odd was about to happen. The forecast had good visibility and clear skies.
Okay, so it's not like they're going to follow some migration pattern. I don't think pigeons even migrate anyway. I mean,
well, not really, but right there in the article it says all this was checked, which is why I think there's something invisible to the naked eye occurred, something that was messing with the birds' internal, global navigation that caused them to veer off course drastically. So they can't figure out why all these birds. It's thought that birds use some type of ferromagnetic, something in the front of their brain or nose to like use the Earth's magnetic field as a kind of a guide. But they have no idea why all these birds went and like disappeared and left, basically.
Where's the start point? Where's the stop point?
Well, so it was some race days in Britain. It was like in the UK. They're calling it like this Bermuda Triangle mystery. But it was just
how far
points
is the
like North
Bermuda
Shore,
Triangle from there?
Like thousands of miles.
So not anywhere near it.
Yeah, right. Like it's across an ocean. Like it's Britain, and then like Bermuda Triangle is like below like the Caribbeans.
Okay, yeah. So it's not like they'd be like, I got off track and now I'm in Bermuda.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like it was like it was supposed to be like a couple 100-mile race, and they're like apparently like that's 1,400 miles or something like out of the way.
Oh, so what you're saying? So it wasn't like the Bermuda Triangle was on its way; it was completely out of the way.
Well, you guys know where like the Caribbeans are and like where Britain is, right?
Yeah, but
I didn't know if the race like passed through that area. That's why.
Yeah.
No, I think it was supposed to stay in the country. I don't think they were even supposed to leave the country.
So what if like, because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like where they talk about like the areas in the Bermuda Triangle, like the magnetic field just throws
Right.
off. So what if like if birds actually use that shit, they're way more sensitive to it, and it's actually possibly that it could fuck
birds
with them
actually
from 1,000.
use that shit.
No, but I mean, like, what are the chances? Like, there's like some birds that have like a hypersensitivity to any kind of disruption in a magnetic field.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
You
I mean,
just
I'd
sounded really
stretch. What's that?
They said you just sounded really smart.
You were just breaking up.
Oh.
I mean, I know that's a stretch, but
No.
because even
what's weird is if that's how it was going, like why would birds just from like Britain and UK over these couple of days, why would they be the ones overly susceptible to this? And then it's being so drastic that these birds can notice it, but it goes undetected and doesn't affect anywhere else.
It's going on holiday, mate. All right, I'm sorry. I'm just bombing tonight. I'm gonna stop.
Yep, there it is. Boom.
Hold on.
Actually, speaking, I mean, I obviously have no idea, but speaking about the Bermuda Triangle, have you ever heard the theory that like, so when like a lot of different planes and stuff go down in that area, it's because that area in the ocean is actually like off gassing. I don't remember what the actual gas is, but it's coming up through there, which actually stops the planes from being able to like run. Like it stops the engines. Have you ever heard that?
Well, what about ships that sink, though?
Yeah.
Probably similar concept, I would imagine, if it's a combustion engine.
Well, if it's stopping it from combustion, it could be that, I've never heard of this theory, but it could be something to do with oxygen. So it could be like the people are just, asphyxiating and dying.
Yeah.
There's a couple other areas that have like the similar effect on planes and ships and whatnot. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I know I've read a couple different ones about it, a couple different areas in the ocean, in the world. But yeah, I don't know. Is there any theories on what's happening?
With these birds,
Maybe the pigeons are just fucking sick of being fucking carrier pigeons.
Yeah. Fuck this. We're out.
They're like, you want me to fly how far?
What? Fuck you.
Yeah, they were supposed to fly like 300 miles and they like did like 1,400 or something. It just seems like a longer journey. Like, we're just gonna go down to the Caribbeans for a while and hang out.
Yeah.
Bird pussy,
Dude,
come back.
I would rather
What?
be there than fucking Britain.
Yeah. Cold, rainy. Hey. Maybe they don't have so much differences than humans after all.
John, what the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm tired. I'm exhausted.
That's funny.
All right. Well, cool. That's it. I mean, we know that we've heard plenty of stories about ships and planes disappearing there. I've never heard of a group of carrier pigeons, but you're saying so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely new.
Yeah. So we'll add that to the list of victims of the Bermuda Triangle. Cool. You guys got anything else for tonight, or should we shut it down? It's already going on 10 to 10.
Hang on, I'm looking this up real quick.
Yeah.
It does say the price of a carrier pigeon soars to 1.6 million euros. It's the worst day in the history of carrier pigeon racing.
What?
It's a 140-kilometer trip. Let's see. On June 19th alone, this is 2021, over 200,000 carrier pigeons were unable to find their way back. A phenomenon is still unexplained. And then it says, what curse? No, that shit doesn't matter. But it was only supposed to be a 140-kilometer race between Swindon and South Wales. The vast majority of the birds in the contest simply just disappeared. 10% arrived safely. Worse yet, in Peterborough, almost all of the participants in a race involving 10,000 birds evaporated.
Jeez.
That same Saturday across Britain, an estimated 80% of the 250,000 pigeons released across the country were missing. Wow. Yeah, that's actually kind of fucked up. 1,400 who left, only 200 to 300 returned home. And it says found that many other federations in the UK had experienced something similar. It says a notable who is notably Dean Simpson, who is notably in charge of monitoring the weather conditions before the start of the race. The sky was a little overcast, but visibility was good. This phenomenon that has occurred is invisible to the naked eye, and it says several hypotheses. How do you say that? Hypotheses, whatever. Several guesses are therefore considered a succession of mini tornadoes, a solar storm, which could have disturbed their sense of direction, which is generally infallible, and these birds guide themselves using a terrestrial magnetic field. And it says they were all carrying identification ring. They have started to be reported in places as far away as the Netherlands or Mallorca. Is it Mallorca or Mallorca? How do you say that? I thought it, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're not in the UK. They're not in fucking Britain.
Right.
I think it's Mallorca.
Mallorca, that's what it is.
They even have voter identification.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty crazy when you really get into like the numbers and how the fact that they were like, nah, we're just going to that city over there and coming back.
Nope.
Huh.
Nope. Huh. All right. Well, let's land this plane for this week. It's been a long week. Tomorrow's the end of the week. Start of a nice long weekend. I'm coming over your house for tomorrow. What do you have? What's on the menu?
Whatever the fuck you bring.
Say what? Are you busting out that green egg?
No, I am not.
How are you going to cook?
I'm not fucking cooking. That's why it's at 7:00. You can fucking eat dinner.
Wait.
John's so disappointed right now.
No, I'm just like, I thought that this was a cookout. My bad.
No, there's gonna be like a ton of people said they're bringing like side dish type stuff, but I'm not grilling. Dude, literally everybody said yes. So there is way too many people for me to grill.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like 30 people.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
This isn't the typical type 3 gathering.
I was like, I mean, how many people are really going to say yes on a Friday? And then like literally everybody. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this.
No.
So.
Well, hold on a second. I'm trying to convince Rob to come on and say hello.
Fuck Rob.
No. Don't say that about him.
You wouldn't fuck Rob?
I'm not saying that either.
Well, now you've left it ambiguous. Now you got to give us an answer.
Right. On next week's episode. All right. let's do this.
No, I'm keeping you up late tonight, Buddha.
I will just sign off. We've already crashed and burned enough.
No, we haven't. Let's see if he comes on. Oh, come on. Now I'm just stalling.
Yeah.
That report did come out about the aliens.
About what? Oh, really?
Yeah, the Congress did release that 9-page report.
All right. And?
They basically are very conservatively saying, yeah, there's some weird shit going on. We don't know what it is.
Oh, of course. The same shit that they've been saying for, what,
Dude,
I don't know, 80 years?
That fucking report
Yeah, but this
came
is an
out.
official report.
Yeah, the fucking report came out, and it basically said we still have no evidence of any extraterrestrial life.
Extra testicles?
Yes. They basically said, hey, I know that like you guys were looking for this big thing about aliens, but there's no proof there's aliens. That's basically
what they're saying is we don't know what they are. We don't have proof it's aliens. If you want proof it's aliens, give us money.
Yeah,
from Congress.
exactly.
Give us money to outfit these weapon systems, and things that are seeing these things aren't designed for like 4K UHD crazy like human viewing. They're not. Our instruments aren't designed to pick up what we're seeing. Give us money for instruments designed to pick up these unidentified things, and we'll put them on our shit.
Yeah, they look like 7-Eleven security cameras.
Yeah,
that's the quality you're
fucking
getting.
Stupid.
I don't understand though. Like, I mean, we've come so far in like technology. People's doorbell cameras look better than some of the shit that we're seeing from like this military footage.
Well, it was the same way with the, the Apollo stuff. It's like they want redundancy in things that work. So it's usually very old tech. Like this isn't the parts where they optimize stuff. This is made for reliability and repeatability. And then the weapon systems were designed again specifically for, like, if it's a heat-seeking missile and it needs to be infrared, like it doesn't matter which part of the, like it doesn't matter if somebody drew a dick on the side of the tail wing or something. Like,
why does it got to be that?
Well, it could be whatever. You don't have to read the tail wing numbers off of it. You're trying to blow the thing up, right? So you're just looking for a heat signature. Like some of the stuff wasn't designed for like identifying unknown things. They were designed for like military purposes.
What are your thoughts on Lazar's point of view as far as how these ETs will bend space and compress space in front of it to jump these large amounts of distance through the universe? I mean, to me, that just makes complete sense.
Well, that's just describing an Einstein-Rosen like wormhole. You're just bending two parts of space together. Unless they're talking about like taking up a higher dimension of space where it's basically like coming in like flatland, so like you can just observe, like they're coming in and out of space because it just appears like that from our perspective. Well,
the way he put it was, if you're looking in front of you and you have a 6-foot rug in front of you, right? And you pull it with a string and compress the rug in front of you, and you step over the rug, with one step, you still crossed over 6 feet of space. You've just compressed it in front of you, and so that you've skipped over it versus going through it, if that makes sense.
Right. So that's part of like what a warp drive is supposed to do, but it's also getting into like an Einstein-Rosen like wormhole, like to cut through space by like going through the folded paper and stuff. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. But we can't do that yet. We haven't even like unified like quantum mechanics and like general relativity.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna close it out. Buddha's getting.
I'm sure that's all very interesting.
Yeah. It's tired of me stalling, and Rob was having computer issues, so maybe he'll be on next time. Gary, thanks for carving out another Thursday night for us. Hopefully we can do it again soon. Now that you're all up and Nagel base is now up and running. So
fully operational.
Yeah. You gotta come out this way too this summer before the summer's over.
Hell yeah.
So, and I gotta pay you for that switch.
It's bitching and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, for Dan Rady, Steve Gibson, Gary Nagel, Jason Markovitz, Bob Tobicash, Alex Budzinski, Nick Riddle, and Michael Paleo, Joe Barry, and anyone else that's done Type 3 TV over the course of the year. Tune in next Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live broadcast. From the Steak on the Lake, this is John Badinsky. Say goodnight, Buddha.